So the work in this presentation is born out of an Australian Research Council linkage project, bringing together several organisations within Australia's national security community, as well as the 3 universities listed up there. So the broader program of research is about optimising illicit darknet marketplace interventions, which is quite an exciting area of application for human factors and ergonomics. For those of you who are unaware of what these marketplaces are, I'll fill you in a moment. So in this presentation, I'll overview some of the broader issues at play here, introduce you to the Darknet, our systems ergonomics approach, and some design workshops that we recently did with stakeholders to help with the research translation aspect, which was brought up earlier. So first, the problem. So we do know that drug use and abuse is common in Australia. 16% of Australians 14 years or older have used illicit drugs. I will point out that the majority of these uses is cannabis use. However, even that is associated with very high productivity costs. The figure there, 3.16 billion. Things like deaths, hospitalisation, those years of productivity lost. Identity crime is another challenge in Australia that activity on the Darknet affects. So 1 in 4 Australians have been affected, and this includes things such as theft of personal information, such as the driver's licence or credit card details. And the nefarious aspect of identity crime is people often do not know when they have been affected until they go to do something like take out a loan and find that their credit rating has been negatively affected. In addition to that figure of $2.65 billion annual costs to the Australian society, there are a number of devastating emotional costs associated with this issue as well. So the Darknet. The Darknet is a medium that has been used to facilitate both the access to drugs and the sale of identity information. It encompasses a number of things, but our main focus has been on the Darknet accessed via Tor, also known as the Onion Router, which is a software package. I won't delve into the technical details. Essentially, Tor anonymizes internet use and disguises which IP address has accessed a particular site. It is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to trace access back to an individual if the right measures have been put in place. So what has emerged on the Darknet and Tor are Darknet marketplaces. So this is the Silk Road, the original Darknet marketplace, which was shut down in 2013. Much like you would see on sites such as eBay and other peer-to-peer sale mechanisms, users set up shops and advertise their own goods. The markets self-regulate as buyers leave feedback and comments. So feedback and reputation is critical on these sites. These are 3 considerations important about the Darknet and what it has enabled. So it has removed many of the traditional barriers to entry into crime. A suburban dad with no criminal history and too much spare time could become a drug dealer from the comfort of their home, and this has happened. This opens up new sources of supply and demand. There is potentially a worldwide market. Along with anonymity, cryptocurrency use, and increasing user sophistication, the Darknet emboldens criminal behaviour. Users may feel they can sell more without the physical risks that are usually associated with drug dealing. So law enforcement agencies internationally have, of course, attempted to close these markets. And while closures have been successful, the trend has been for users to migrate to other marketplaces and for business and trade to continue to increase. And there is, therefore, a clear need to develop effective and novel interventions that can stem trading on the darknet. And to tackle these challenges, that's where systems ergonomics and this research program has come in. So there are a number of principles of systems ergonomics that can apply here. Things such as that there are many actors across the system and all of their decisions and actions affect the outcomes. There are multiple interacting and contributing factors involved, and countermeasures should focus on the systemic changes rather than individuals. And like what Dennis has just overviewed, while these principles are typically applied in the context of optimizing system performance, this research looks to use them for the purposes of disruption. So up to this point in time, we have completed quite a chunk of the work on the research, and we applied these three main methodological approaches. I'm not going to go into the details of the findings of this research. Some of it is published. I'll give you just a very conceptual overview. So work domain analysis, which has been overviewed already today multiple times. EAST and STAMP. So work domain analysis describes a system in terms of its purposes, its values, functions, processes, and objects. EAST is more focused on the activity of the marketplaces in terms of networks of tasks, networks of the agents and actors involved, and networks of the information being passed around the system. And STAMP, Leveson's model, it outlines all those actors in the system across hierarchical levels and describes the control and feedback mechanisms. So it takes a much broader perspective on the system. So looking very broadly, these are a few key implications from that phase of research. So each model does provide something unique, making it align with a many model approach, which has been mentioned a couple of times before, and which I think Paul is going to be doing a session on in the conference. In particular, they provide different perspectives on the system. So you're shifting from that activity in the marketplaces up to the broader societal system that is helping to stem the activities and the trading. And together, they provide this comprehensive and systematic means to mapping out the requirements of interventions, the processes involved, and potentially modelling the effects of the interventions. So I'd like to delve into a phase that we completed earlier this year, which was in doing design workshops, in which we took the insights from the analyses, the EAST, WDA, and STAMP, and we worked with some stakeholders to try and develop novel intervention concepts. So as a background to this phase of research, as mentioned, it is a well-known challenge that there is a gap between what is done in academic settings and in industry or practice. The models we use are often not user-friendly, and while interesting, end users can be unsure of how to apply insights from those models. As part of her PhD research, Gemma, who presented earlier, introduced a design toolkit. And based on the principles of participatory design, which include things like mutual learning between researchers and practitioners, and that end users have shared ownership of the end products, this could potentially be an effective approach to designing interventions in this space. So in terms of methodological development, this research applied the toolkit with those three approaches mentioned earlier, which extends beyond the earlier uses of the toolkit with cognitive work analysis alone. The phase had two main purposes. The first one, which I'll cover today, to co-design intervention concepts with the stakeholders. Later in a phase, we'll be looking to evaluate these concepts for their impact and feasibility, and also assess their potential to be implemented. So we had quite a small group of experts from law enforcement, from national security, a banking sector and academics domains, and there was a balance of expertise between Darknet and Darknet marketplaces and systems thinking. To prepare, we sent our participants a design brief a few days before. This outlined things like the intentions of the workshops, as well as the insights from our past analyses. On the actual days, we had our systems analyses in their full glory printed on large sheets, and we also had a few sort of prompts, including design with intent cards, which were prepared by Lockton in his PhD research. A couple of examples there. The idea there to sort of trigger some creative insights and thinking. And we also had some templates around which the participants could scribble down their ideas in the later phases. So, as a very general summary, the workshop was delivered across 2 days. On that first day, the main sort of activities, we started by getting the participants to get out all their existing ideas around how they thought we should intervene in the marketplaces. It's then that we presented on systems thinking as a conceptual framework, as well as the analyses we had completed to date and their key insights. Following that, we got participants prepared by going through some sort of creative thinking activities, helping them to feel comfortable in the environment and to contribute. And only later in the day, we got to a few phases of design. So starting with very quick superficial ideas generation, getting as many ideas down as possible, and then a process of refinement and combination of ideas into more system-focused interventions. And day 2, we encouraged those participants to reflect on what they'd been doing during the day, came back fresh in the morning, and we reflected as a group and also discussed more of the feasibility side of the interventions. So post-workshop, it involved the process of gathering all the information together, expanding those concepts that they came up with as much detail as possible, and the research team then met to review and refine those concepts. So considering things such as their merit, the potential outcomes, whether they made sense on a face validity kind of aspect, whether any concepts could be combined. So in terms of results, so the participants came up with 14 minor concepts, 5 more substantiated concepts, and through our process of combining them, got a bit of a splatter of them on the screen there. Yes, it's a good thing that you can't read it because the information is meant to be confidential, and we can't really share the, the actual interventions that were developed from this process. However, I'd like to emphasize some of the broader implications of the approach. So things such as systems thinking is, it appears, fit for purpose for informing interventions in a complex domain, such as the Darknet. The design toolkit, in combination with the systems analyses, provides a tool to prompt innovative ideas and examine different perspectives. While we weren't really able to assess the novelty of the concepts themselves, we did end up with quite a broad array. So they were quite different, those final 5, in how they approached the issue. And I'll get to a point in my future directions about where that's taking us. I'd just like to point out this final point as well here. Co-design has benefits. So through that process, we are training those individuals in systems thinking, and so upskilling them in that way, helping to bridge that research gap. And it's also creating buy-in from the stakeholders. So by being a part of that design process, instead of us as being the academics coming with expert knowledge about systems thinking, preparing our own ideas and presenting them, it's a much more engaging process going through a workshop such as this. And ideally, we'd like to think that the concepts themselves are efficacious and beyond what is already out there and what law enforcement are doing. So just quickly, in terms of future directions, so we are looking to evaluate the concepts more formally and as an approach to try and, because it is a complex domain and there's so much involved in terms of outcomes and in terms of just as the word agility was used earlier by Dennis in describing cryptocurrency, the agility of criminals to innovate in their approaches. We're looking at modelling the effects of our interventions on the various systems analyses to try and get an idea of the more emergent type effects and those broad-ranging effects as well. We're also zoning in on a particular intervention, looking at a controlled experimental design to see what effects that has on user behaviour as well. So just as a summary statement, so the Darknet is a complex socio-technical system, and it is the type that we can expect individuals in the future to go towards in terms of seeking to innovate their methods and to perpetuate these issues going forward. So drug use and identity crime are just two examples of issues in society that could be perpetuated by these emerging technologies. So just to acknowledge our co-authors, Paul and Dennis, who are in the room, and the Australian Research Council, of course, as well. Thank you.
We've got time for a couple of questions, if you have them. Over here.
Thank you very much for the presentations, both the last few. This is really just a comment. Having struggled with our ethics department on multiple occasions, how are you guys going with ethics? Then you obviously have really high friends in IT. Or are you using other computer systems to access the dark web?
Right. Well, in terms of the latter question around the IT aspect, we initially had support from a third-party organisation in going through things, and subsequently we've been able to set up a capability to approach that through our university's IT department as well. So it isn't actually illegal to access the Darknet itself. So I guess this is drawing back to the ethics question. So not that I'm advocating for this, but anyone in the room could go and download Tor, preferably a VPN before that, and then to browse that for various things. There's right. So yeah, we've been taken out of the university's system. They've given us a special virtual machine. Yeah.
Good question. All right, thank you very much, Ben.